Good evening, a very good evening to all the participants. On behalf of the PN Panikar Foundation and the National Digital Library of India, we are very happy to invite you for this webinar on copyrights law and digital libraries. And today, our speaker for this session, Professor Prabhuta Ganguly. I was blessed to have attended at least two of his sessions, and I was amazed with the kind of intellectual ideas that he has, and he's translating it into various actionable items as a country. So I was very uh, happy. One of our colleagues, Professor Das, recommended his name for this session. So I was very happy to see his recommendation, and he immediately obliged to our request to participate and conduct this webinar. So on behalf of the foundation and the National Digital Library of India, and where Professor Ganguly is also one of the co-principal investigators of our program, and Professor Ganguly is one of the pioneers in this copyright law, and he is basically from chemistry discipline. He did his MSc in chemistry from IIT Kanpur, and then he pursued his chemical physics PhD in chemical physics from the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, and then his postdoctoral research in Germany and Canada. He was a visiting scientist at the Baba Atomic Research Center in 1981, and he later joined Hindustan Lever Limited as a research scientist, and he worked there at multiple levels at Hindustan Lever Limited. Currently, he is the CEO of Vision IPR, a consulting group which is providing support to various institutions on IPRs, intellectual property rights, patents, and copyright law. And he is a qualified and a leading patent attorney in India and an expert in IPR and information management. He is also an elected fellow of the Maharashtra Academy of Sciences, a recipient of the National Science Talent Scholarship, and also an Alexander Van Humboldt Foundation Fellow. He has several publications. He is the author of over 30 publications, which include research papers in the field of IPR. He is also co-chairman of various advisory committees, task force, and is associated with various academic and research institutions. And he is also one of the members of the International Editorial Board of the IPR Journal, which is World Patent Information, published by Elsewhere Science Limited, UK. And we are very pleased and happy and honored to have Professor Ganguly with us for this webinar. Over to Balagopalji for formal introduction of our introduction of our guests to the audience. Over to Balagopal, sir.
Yes, I already introduced because one of the scientists of the country who is drafting this copyright law is a very complex things, and is this what you call the other rights to safeguard the interest of the others and others. And he's because when I heard the biodata, when I saw the biodata of Professor Ganguly, he is one of the I cannot say what adjective I cannot can give. I am also puzzled because he has adorned lot of positions, comfortable positions in the country as a scientist, as a advisor, whatnot. We are grateful to our young friend Dr. Vignesh to get him to this webinar organized during this 25th National Reading Day, Reading Month celebrations 2020. I welcome you, sir, again and again. Thank you, sir, for coming. And we are all eager to hear your speech. Over to Professor Ganguly, sir.
Right. Very good evening to every one of you, and thank you so much for inviting me to this very prestigious month where the Panikar Foundation, which has been doing such a fantastic job across the country, and I have read a lot about the Panikkar Foundation and how Mr. Panikkar actually, from the very grassroots levels, developed the whole concept of literacy and spread it across the state. And I think that's absolutely phenomenal work that has been done. I would also think that this particular topic of copyright law and digital library is a very befitting um, honor to Mr. Panikkar, and I dedicate this particular lecture to him. Having said that, I would like to go immediately to the lecture. I hope you can see the screen which I have shared, and uh, so we are talking about the subject of copyright law and digital libraries. Now, when you look at this particular subject, uh, we need to look at various. So let me go to the very first slide, and that is, why is this subject of copyright relevant in the context of information and knowledge management? Now, when we talk about libraries, the concept of libraries is not just a collection of books, it's not just a room, but libraries, archives, museums, and their like, as I put there, are custodians for diverse types of work, copyright and non-copyright work, and information needs for the consumers of copyrighted material and things. And what are they? So what do these libraries, archives, museums, and information centers do? So the first thing they do is they procure works in various forms, digital or non-digital, make them accessible in various ways. And that's the whole process by which we really have the libraries and archives and information centers working. Similarly, the archives, libraries, museums, and all these centers, they also create and help in the creation of different types of works, which may be copyrighted, may not be copyrighted. So they participate. So all the library professionals, all the information professionals, all the knowledge professionals also help in the whole process of creating different types of works that are there. That's the second type of process that gets involved. And the third, of course, it exploits diverse media for publishing out there. Now, in all these particular aspects, we need to look at three very important areas. And that is that what is the role of this thing called copyright in all this? In very simple terms, very, very simple terms, copyright is nothing else but that part of law which helps you to protect your works. So if I wrote a story, can somebody copy it without asking me? Can somebody distribute it without taking my permission? The answer is copyright law says no, they must come to me and take my permission. Similarly, if I have written something in Bengali and somebody wants to translate that in Malayalam, then the question is, can they directly translate? The copyright law says, no, hand on, please go to Ganguly, take his permission to do the translation. Then you can translate and distribute it to the rest of the world. So copyright law has different dimensions. It helps you to protect your works. So from where do we derive the strength for all this? So for this, I would like to go to three international agreements that are so important in this context. So the first part, which is there, is we talk about the international, covenant of economic, social, cultural thing of, which was signed in, which came into force on 3rd January 1976. Then the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that is something which came in 1948. United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, adopted in the 107th plenary meeting in 2007. Now we need to go into that and see from where we derive all this meaning for copyright. So I won't go into great detail, but I'm just going to read out a few parts so that we appreciate from where and why we need these particular areas in law to really look at things. So we go to the next slide, and that is very important that you will see that in Article 15, I don't want you to read everything, but very important for us, very significant for us, is that it comes with certain very important statements, just as Mr. Balagopal talked about Mr. Panikar, thinking about the entire thing. You can see how what Mr. Panikar thought is actually enshrined in these agreements. So you see, to take part in cultural life, to have scientific, progress, scientific, literary, artistic things, and how you will give rights to the authors, how the different countries will go into full realization of the rights and look how they will diffuse knowledge into society, how you will respect freedom, indispensable for scientific and creative activity, and recognize the benefits for society. So this is something that comes very strongly under this particular covenant. So then the Article 17 says you have right to own property and no one shall arbitrarily deprive you of the property. So this is any property, but intellectual property is one such property. Similarly, we go to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. In fact, that's the year when I was born. Now, important part, again, what Mr. Panikar said, right to education. And education shall be free, at least in the elementary stage, and why you want to make it compulsory, how you want to make it accessible, very important, how it will be important for development of the society, and why it gives rise to promoting understanding, tolerance, etc. And then very important that the parents have the right to choose the kind of education that has to be given to the children. I carry on. Then Article 26 of the same declaration comes about and says right to education. So therefore, if you don't distribute knowledge, if you don't give access to knowledge, if you don't give access to information, then how will you go and get all that right to education, etc. So very important. So when we talk about copyright, we have to keep all this in mind before we go further. Then we have the whole area of education to full development of human rights. Then you come to all the other aspects into the part. Then everyone has the right freely to participate in cultural activities, community, etc. And everyone has the right for protection of moral aspects of it, which is also significant for any scientific, literary, or artistic things in which he is the author. So the question that Mr. Balagopal was mentioning, that if someone wrote a book, can one and wants to publish it, can one also digitize it and put it in the net, etc., etc. All these questions come about in this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Similarly, when we go into the other part of United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, very important word, indigenous people. Now, so therefore it brings in all cultural traditions, progress of culture, how do you promote cultural aspects, and how do you make people know about it? That, and so distribution, not only developing the knowledge, but also maintaining the knowledge, distributing the knowledge, sharing the knowledge, and therefore we must have a framework for doing that without any fear. And then we come, of course, that how do you get, and therefore there comes in the enjoyment, means of subsistence, development, etc., etc., etc. So doing all this, when you come to Article 31, therefore that's where our museums, our archives, and all the traditional knowledge, organizations that protect traditional knowledge derive their strength from this aspect of the United Nations Declaration of Rights for Indigenous People. So Now let me come to this whole framework and to the subject proper. Having understood this part, the question that comes about is that when we talk about promoting these knowledge and all the information out there, we need to create some sort of benchmarks. So benchmarks of protection. Can anything and everything be protected? Should everything be protected? If it is protected, how do we make it known to people? How do we make them accessible? And all this comes under the provision of what is known as intellectual property rights. The word intellectual, mind you, is nothing hi-fi. It's the creation of the human mind. So the word intellectual is derived from creation of the human mind. You convert that into a property and you get some rights for that particular property. Now, what you do with your property is governed by these different laws. And copyright law looks at the aspects, the creative aspects of human mind, the literary things that you produce, and many other aspects like literary and whatnot. So now, when you look into the global knowledge domain, how do you bring conditionalities for access? How do you make people, how do you create a framework so that people can access? Because if people can't access, if people can't access freely, then how do you take the knowledge to the people? And how do the people benefit from that knowledge? So IPR laws bring that sort of a framework which helps you to do that. So when doing all these laws, every law also has another dimension where it tries to balance the things between rights on one side of the people who own it and the users on the other side. So the law balances the rights of the people who own the rights and the people who are going to use the rights, so that there's a proper balance in society out there. And that's very important. And all these processes have to be completely transparent. That's what the law says. And also, these protections are not infinite in time. They're protected for a certain length of time, after which anybody can use it without the permission of the right holder. Then, very important, because these laws are there, it gives you rights. Every right comes with obligations. And therefore, the right holder also has an obligation towards society to help the society grow and not bring in only restrictive features. And therefore, there has to be a facilitating part. And that is an obligation of the IPR holder, because the IPR holder has got a right, and therefore there are obligations. Then there are conditions under which the law tells that the right is exhausted. For example, in copyright, when you buy a book, right, the book is a copyrighted material. So you have bought the book, but can anyone stop me from using the book? No. Can anyone stop me from lending the book to somebody? No. Can somebody stop me from selling the book as a second-hand book? No. So the law brings in and says, once you have bought it and becomes yours, you can do a lot of things with it, but you cannot make copies of it and distribute it. So we need to look at those things as well. And therefore, there are very important parts where we look at how to enforce. That means if somebody copies without taking my permission, then how can I take action? How does the law help me to take action on these? And then very important part which comes in terms of consumer protection and competition laws, etc. And very important in the present day context, we have a lot of IT laws. So the moment you go digital, the whole digital process is something that brings into focus all these communication systems, internet, your 4G, 5G, and all those things that come from IT sector. And therefore, the IT sector becomes, equally important, and laws governing the IT sector also have to be taken into consideration. Now, so therefore, in short, every law, including the copyright law, talks about who will own whatever has been created. That's the first part. The moment you come to ownership, the rights, we must know what are the rights. But the moment we bring in with the rights, the law also says, however, under certain circumstances, right? People can use it without your permission and you cannot take objection. So those come under specific exceptions, and we have to understand what those exceptions are. And because you have been given the right under law, there are certain obligations the right holder has to, um, has to meet. So it's a very, very, excellent balancing between ownership rights, acceptance, and obligations. That is what brings societal progress. And if we are able to manage these four words properly in society, our society will grow. Why? Because if I have created something and I don't have the rights to it, then it will be unfair to me, right? So, but if I take the rights and overuse my right and don't meet my obligations towards society, then I'm doing injustice towards society. The right which was given to me by society, I have not done justice to society. So these are the very important aspects that we need to consider as we look at. Now, therefore, four very important words. First comes the word prospecting. Prospecting means that you are using the knowledge, you are using my things by taking my permission. Piracy means you're doing it without my permission, without my having given you that particular permission. However, right on the right side of the slide, you see the other two words. I can make it accessible to you. But if I don't make it affordable, that accessibility has no meaning. So therefore, it's a it's a very, very fine balance between accessibility and affordability. So simply owning is not good enough. I make it accessible through the net. I make it accessible in a library. But if I don't make it affordable, it doesn't have any sense. It doesn't have any meaning. So I have to look at those aspects as well. So when we come in the context of library, we look at all these features very, very carefully as we go. So now, very simple, as we come on to what is copyright. The moment we come to this word of copyright, as you will see that I've put on one side real property, that what you can do. On the other side, what is copyright? What if something is protected under copyright? What does the right holder? What right does the right holder have? So to reproduce the work, to issue copies, to perform the work in public, to communicate, to make cinematographic films, etc., to make translation of the work, to make any adaptation. So I, as the author, have the right to do all this. Now, can somebody else do it? Then to do these, they have to take my permission. That's in very simple words, what is copyright out there. So the right holder can do all this. The one who doesn't have the right must come to the right holder and take permission. However, having said this, as I said, the law also has some exceptions. And we'll have to see those exceptions where someone who does not have the right can still use the work without going to the person who has the right, right? And those fall under exceptions, and libraries and many others can use the power of those exceptions in the law to take and function. Now we will look at all those as we go along. So very interesting. So the first part, extremely significant, is when you take digital technologies and you look at internet. The first question that comes, that the laws which are applicable in the physical world, can we use the same laws in the digital world? And that's a question that we will try and answer today. Now, very important, what has the digital world done to us? First of all, everything, all innovations, timescales have changed. Everything has become so speedy. Transmission has become fast. I'm lecturing to you sitting in Mumbai, and you're sitting in different parts of the world and listening to me. So distribution. So today, Panikkar Foundation is distributing my lecture across. It can reproduce. It's recording it. It can reproduce it. Now somebody else can take the lecture and create adaptations and translate it, can make a film out of it, can recreate out there. They're so easy nowadays because of the digital technology. storage, how much of storage has increased from how many earlier. Today, even the smallest mobile phone is more powerful than a computer of say 10 years ago. So you can see storage and access to information you can do anytime and from anywhere. Now that's what it has done. However, that's what the digital world has done. The physical world. Suppose you have a library and you have a book. Can everybody read the book simultaneously, even in the same library? Answer is no. Only one person can read it. But if it is digital, you can share it. Many people can do it at the same time. So the whole concept in the digital framework is very different. And therefore, the laws in the physical domain will have to give way to laws in the digital domain. That's the first concept. And then I don't want to go into great details of it, but there are exceptions. And so the first exception in copyright law, digital or no digital, very important, that if I want to do it for personal use, I can download it, I can read it for myself. I can write a review, I can write a criticism, I can use it in various educational activities, all those things. I can do various things out there, and that falls under the exceptions in the copyright law. Similarly, now in our recent law, they have made a special provision for disabled people, because earlier, if you had a book, okay, then you could only convert it into Braille. Now, if you convert into Braille, then the blind person would use the Braille. But today in the digital world, you can convert a book into digital, and today you can put a earphone around you, the disabled person can put, and when you scan the book gets converted into voice, and the disabled person can listen to the book, can feel the book. Now all this, now earlier to 2012 in our country, this was a violation of copyright, but this has now brought within the exceptions of the copyright. So for disabled people, there are special formats, things, and special arrangement has been done. So the Panikkar Foundation can extend its work to disabled people as well to cover in the whole literacy mission. And that will fall within the exceptions, so digital or otherwise. And then many things that we do in museums, archives can also be looked into it. And also very important that when we use it digitally, when I'm seeing it in my computer, it's being stored in my computer for a very short time. Now, if you went to the physical world to take it and keep it with you, now in the digital world, it says if it transient or it is stored for a very short time because it was required to be so, that also falls under exceptions under the 2012 Act. And therefore, to bring these things under this thing, we need to be. However, if I took it and stored it on a permanent basis, then I have to go to other exceptions. And what are they? So very important. I will come to this part later. So as this I will come later. Now come to other things on library exceptions. The first part, that if I am a non-commercial public library, the Indian law says, and if the library possesses a non-digital copy, then it could have given the physical copy on loan, but it can make a copy. It can make a copy, but it will not include a temporary loan. So possession. So very important that if we are making, if the library, if there's a book which is not available for sale in India, then actually library can take that, make 3 copies of the book, and then keep it under them and then use it for library purposes. So these are in the exceptions of the copyright law in India. So you can actually digitize that particular book and use it. Now, the other part is that if the library shares the information with people who want to do research or for private study with a view of publication, you can share it. That also comes under library exceptions out there. Now, so we need to understand that in the case of library, what are those exceptions as a library that I can do, and what are the things where I have to be very careful not to do. And in this, there was a very interesting judgment from the Delhi High Court, what is known as the Chancellor's Masters and Scholars Oxford University versus Delhi University and Rajeshwari Copy Services and others, where they had produced course packs and the publishers took Delhi University, the Delhi School of Economics, Delhi University, and this photocopy people to the Delhi High Court that you are infringing. The Delhi High Court came with a very interesting judgment where they said no, if it was done for course pack in the course of instruction, then the library can do it. So that fell under a major law. So now that has not been challenged in the Supreme Court. Therefore, this now stands as law in India. Very important that in our Copyright Act, it tells you there's a section called 65 and 64, 65A and 65B, which tells you that if there is any digital work which has been protected by technological measures for not copying, and you circumvent that, then that would amount to an offense. So while doing all this, we have to be very careful to also understand what I can and what I cannot. Now, digitization of library is a very, very big thing. So can I digitize anything and everything? The answer is no, but be very careful. That just because I have a scanner, I can take every book, scan it, and digitize it. If I'm digitizing it just for storing, then it is okay. But if I want to use it to distribute it, I have to be very careful. Therefore, I must go and sign contracts. Therefore, the digital world says what you can do with physical books and what you can do in the digital world are very different. And therefore, when you are, taking e-books or you're negotiating licenses with journals and others, you need to be very careful about the type of contracts that you sign, because those contracts limit your utilization and what you can and what you cannot do. Therefore, these negotiations have to be done very carefully out there so that you don't limit yourselves unnecessarily. This is the first part. Similarly, with the digital things, digitized form, with the physical books, we do interlibrary loan. With the digital one, whether I can loan it to some other library or that library can loan it to me, I'll have to go into the contracts and the licensing conditions of those e-copies to understand what I can, what I cannot. Therefore, the digital world is bringing, though it makes it easier to share, it also comes with certain types of limitations. And therefore, we need to understand those particular limitations as we go along. And so there are different types of licenses. Very important for us that in many cases, if your license is for only one system, then you cannot put it in the LAN, you cannot put it in the network. So you've got to be rather careful on those particular features. So as we go along, I just want to take a few cases so you understand actually what has happened around the world. So Google is very well known. We all use Google. Now, what Google did many years ago, about 6-7 years ago, they went and actually scanned a large number of books from various libraries, various universities in the US. Then they said, we are scanning, we are making an electronic database of this, we want to make it available to people. Immediately, the publishers took them to the court, the Authors Guild. They took them to the court. When they took them to the court, first of all, because they had made digital copies of all these books and they were under copyright. So can you scan? You can, but can you distribute? Answer is no. Did you take permission of the copyright holders? You haven't. But then when they went to the court, Google argued that, look, when we are doing all this, we are not making the full book available on the net. When somebody searches, they search, they may get the title, they may get some parts of the book, they don't get the whole book. And therefore, the court looked at it for the first time and said, oh, then this is okay. This falls under the exceptions under the US law, and they went and um, did not um, did not give an injunction against Google. They said it's all fine. So the Authors Guild went to the higher court, and when the Authors Guild went to the higher court, what happened? The court also looked at it and said, no, Google is doing a wonderful job for the society. That what they are doing, they are not reproducing the whole book to distribute freely. That people, when they search, they either get the abstract of the book, they get some parts of the chapters, and when they have to use the book, they go to the library or they buy the book. So therefore, even the Supreme Court did not entertain this particular complaint. So this becomes a very powerful way of looking at how copyright exceptions can be used intelligently, even while creating these particular digital frameworks. This is case number one. Let's go to case number two, very famous case called the Authors Guild versus Hathi Trust. Now, Hathi Trust is a digital library again. And what they did, they actually brought in and put all these, told the libraries, the member libraries could order replacement copies of the works which they already owned as an original copy. The members' original copy, if it got lost or destroyed, then they could create a replacement, etc. All that. So when they did this, what happened? Immediately they were, and they allowed also full things, full text search, search results found in the works in public domain, and they were careful not to infringe the copyright holders. They took permission wherever they needed, but they looked at that in cases where the full work was shown, that was with the copyright permission of the copyright holders, but where they did not have the permission of the copyright, they only showed page numbers and the results were, so they did not make the book public as such. However, while doing that, and also were visually challenged, as I mentioned, they made it fully available. Now, when the Authors Guild took them to court, they again argued. They argued, what did they argue? That we are not making the full book available just like that. We are only making parts of it available so people get to know more about the book. So they get more attracted to reading. So they will go to the original book and look into it. And precisely, and also they said that we are making it available to disabled, etc. in a certain manner. It falls under the exceptions of what is known as fair use in the US, and therefore the court simply disallowed the complaint and let Hathi Trust go ahead. And then afterwards, Hathi Trust and the Authors Guild met and settled the issue. So this is case number two, which deals with digital libraries. What is our case number three? And this is a local case. You can see it is of April 2019. The question which was there is that whether an infringer of copyright on the internet is to be treated differently from an infringer in the physical world. And the Delhi court came and said, no, that's not the case. They must be put on par. With the seeking or blocking a website dedicated to piracy, and would you have it in this particular way? The answer is no. Then there's something called rogue websites, whether they continuously by habit, or they keep taking a huge amount of material and allow people to simply copy through their website. They may not be copying, but they may be allowing people to copy. So these become the rogue websites because they're allowing, leading people to copy. Therefore, one has to be very careful. Like, for example, if you take and you create a website and you allow people to, you allow people to go through your website and help them to copy, then you become as much implicated as much as the person copying, because you're leading the person out to the copying zone. So there is a very important part. And whether test for determining rogue site is quantitative or qualitative. And they said, well, if they overwhelmingly take and help people to do that, then they are infringing. So the court then came and put in permanent. So what did the court do? Court simply told this particular website, sorry, you are helping people to copy, and therefore you are as much involved in the whole process out there. So again, in the digital world, if you are an intermediary, right, you have to be very, very careful. And therefore the court passed an order saying, no, close that website, and told the ISPs that you will block their websites completely, and go, and also told Department of or electronics out there that you must issue notification for them to close. So again, in the digital world, if you are putting things for sharing in this particular way, which is infringing copyright, then of course you will be taken to task out there. I'll go to the last judgment, and then I will go to the last judgment out there. And that is where this is the newspaper, Dainik Jagaran. We all know it gets published in Hindi. Now, the readers, this is May 29, 2020 judgment, very latest. So the readers could either buy a physical copy or go to the website to read this particular bit. No issue. You could freely do it, no problem. But somebody else, some other organization, it's called Telegram. What they did, they created a framework. They created a digital frame, a platform where, people could come in and through that platform, go and collect and download and distribute. So now you are going from the physical to the digital. And now in this particular digital, also people who are distributing, the names will not be known. So it's all done electronically. Now, what did they do? Jan Prakashan of Dainik took them to court. And the court looked at it very carefully and said, no, if they are doing what they are doing, it is a clear violation of copyright. And therefore, even no exceptions will fall into the place. And therefore, they will have to take permission in doing that. So this is something which is, we have to keep track that the digital world, we look at copyright in some way, physical world, we look at copyright slightly differently as we go ahead. Now, so that was the judgment. Now, let me come, since we are talking about digital libraries and we are talking about the National Digital Library of India. Now, the first part is the National Digital Library of India is a wonderful platform. And this platform really connects you to the different information sources, and through its engine, if you search, you get to know what you're searching is available in which libraries in India and in some of the international libraries. So the question that comes in, that when you go through this particular platform, is the platform collecting the materials? No, it doesn't. It leads you. And therefore, you go to the different sites and you're able to get all the information from there. Therefore, copyright issues become extremely important to look at. And so how do we create this framework without getting into problems with copyrights, especially for the librarians and information scientists? So what Digital Library of India did in the last 2 years or 3 years is rather 2.5 years, is it conducted a large number of workshops, 3 workshops. And while conducting these workshops with the librarians, we educated the librarians on copyright and what are the limitations. And shortly in the next few weeks, what is coming out for the first time in India through the NDLI is a copyright guide for librarians. And we will shortly be putting that in the NDLI site for all of you to really get access to, and then give your comments, and then we'll finalize that. And it will become the first copyright guide in India for people to use out there. So that's what we are doing with NDLI, and NDLI is doing a number of other things, which in other presentations you have heard. So I now come to the last part of my presentation, and what is happening in the digital world. Very significant. Artificial intelligence. Everyone hears about AI and how wonderful things that AI does. And see what is happening. Subtle transition to machines with human-like attributes. Just as the way we think, the machine can think. Just as the way we feel, the machine can feel. So is it a machine anymore? That's the first question. Second is that we can embed certain type of devices in our body and we become enhanced, integrated with artificial intelligence. And therefore, there's a blurring of human and machine interface. And in this context, we have to rethink the whole concept of copyright. Why? Because the first of all, do we consider this extremely with all the deep learning and with all these very advanced AI systems, can with all the human attributes, will we, and that machine creates something, then who is the owner of copyright? Because there a human is not involved. So the whole copyright question is going to be re-asked. It distributes from one system to another. It's a non-human distributing to a non-human. So will the laws that apply to me as a human will apply to these? Copyright laws will have to be rethought about in these particular things. So that's why I say rethinking copyright laws. And therefore, what will be the issues? Who is the owner? What is open source? What will be the different types of sharing models? What will be the fair benefit sharing and cross-border activities? All these are going to be important. And specifically in the post-COVID scenario, distant learning is a library digitization, distant learning is a reality. And people are going to use these advanced technologies. So we'll need to look at all these aspects very, very carefully and give a proper thing so that we give a proper meaning to the word ownership, to the distribution, sharing, and bring all the features that would be useful for society. And therefore, this is where the copyright laws will be really tested under very, very rugged terrains. These photographs were taken by me when I went to Oman to teach and to advise their government. And I thought these photographs actually tell you how sort of rugged environment the copyright laws will have to go through now. Coming to the very last part in 1 minute, and therefore I'm saying, you see this beautiful picture. This is something I had collected maybe 50 years ago or 40 years ago. I just put it with some note. Digital platforms and open access and copyright, are they pulling apart? Now you can see that when they pull apart, neither of the two donkeys are able to eat the fodder. So what do we have to do? You are. So the two donkeys have to sit together and think and rethink copyright laws, rethink everything. So that's what they are doing. And when they do it, they find a solution and see what they have done. The two of them go together, eat that, then two of them come this side and eat together. So in short, in summary, now in the digital world, which brings so many opportunities for us, we'll have to rethink our copyright laws and see how to make it useful for society and yet not compromise with the rights of the creators. So the creators get their return, the publishers also get their return, and the librarians are able to do their work, and the society grows despite the fact that we have these particular laws and we take care of them. This is where I will end my talk. Thank you very much. Any questions? I would be prepared to answer.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a brilliant presentation. I think I could see in the last couple of minutes brilliant presentation only in the chat box. So I can imagine how our audience enjoyed this presentation. So as you made the presentation, there were some couple of questions which came in from the participants. So
Yeah,
I'm going to
I'll
read.
just stop sharing so that we can get onto the.
Sure,
right?
sure, sure.
Okay,
sure.
I'll just stop sharing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question, sir, is from Mr. Krishna Prasad. So his question is, if someone's download books from NDLI website, keep it in his or her pen drive and later post it on his or her blog or website. Okay, is this a copyright violation? Kindly answer this. Yeah.
Excellent. So the first part, I think this question has three parts. The first part is when there is a book in the NDLI website. Now, NDLI does not load the book. What NDLI does, as you understand, since you work in the whole process, NDLI gives you a link to download the book from somewhere else. That source, that somewhere else, should have ensured that that book is not under copyright. So it's a very important part to understand that that material which is, let's say you have accessed that particular book, which is, let's say, in IIT Kharagpur, argument purpose. Then IIT Kharagpur, before allowing it to come into the public domain, must ensure that that book is not in copyright. Now, if that book is not in copyright, then you download it and you keep it, it's all fine. But if that book is in copyright and IIT Kharagpur has made a mistake in loading that particular book, which was under copyright, and they were not supposed to do that. So not only IIT Kharagpur will be taken to task, but even you will be taken to task. That's a very short answer. Please go ahead.
The next question is from Ms. Divya. Her question is, can we download few books which a site allows to download by creating a login and then distribute it among the children in a school? Is that possible?
Now, very important that when somebody allows you to download, you will have to go to that website and see what are the conditionalities. And therefore, in today, that when we go into the Creative Commons, right, and we'll have to see under what license that particular material is under. So we'll have to go to the different classifications of the creative license, and if it falls under the very open general creative license saying you can do it, and by giving only the reference that where you got it, who is the author, so that you don't plagiarize. But if you give the right attribution, point number one, and point number two, that you have to understand under what license that was first put on that website and what are the conditionalities put in the website. So therefore, people who are creating the websites also have the responsibility of putting the right marking as to what you can do with it and what you cannot do.
Sure. So the next question is from Dr. Ashutosh. His question is, there are so many websites from where I download good books. My question is, as a librarian, can I print a book and keep it in my library?
It's a very interesting question. See, again, it's the same thing, that when I am downloading, it is all the control is at that stage. That downloading part, what are the conditions under which I download? All the conditions are there. So once I understand that, then it will tell me, yes, can I download it? Can I make a print? Can I keep it in the library? Can I share? All that part depends on what is the conditionalities under which it was put in that website to start with. Now, a large number of websites are not very clear on these issues and they simply upload. So we have to be very careful in doing that. We must check with those websites as to what are the conditions under which this material was uploaded to start with. Otherwise, we may accidentally get into problems of infringement, which we shouldn't be doing.
The next question is from Mr. Sabarishan. Is it applicable for school books also? For example, I create a YouTube channel using the school textbooks. So is it a copyright violation?
See, again, it depends. Now, as I told you, suppose I take a school book, right? And I told you that on one side, now is that school book, am I teaching the school book and using it for teaching in the YouTube? So I will cite some parts of the school book. I will then give my interpretations. I will explain certain things out of that. So that would amount to my contributing something. I'm not taking it as such. I'm not reproducing it as such, but it is by way of criticism. I'm using it for my teaching. So as you see that the copyright law has some exceptions, that while teaching, I can use some copyrighted material in the course of instruction. So if I use it in the course of instruction, so all these are very contextual. So when we are using these things, we have to define the context. There are no general answers for it. So everything is very contextual.
So the next question is from Ms. Dolly Mishra. Her question is, can we share links of fiction books with our children?
Yeah. See, now the links, yes, you can share the links. Now, again, as I said, in many of these links which are there, you can read, like in the Dainik Jagaran case, right? The Dainik Jagaran told its users that you can take the link, you can study it, you can read it, but you can't download it. So this is very important to look at it. So therefore, whatever is, see, for example, when a library buys a book, right? Now, when you take an e-book, let's come to that. When you take an e-book, the point about an e-book which is there, in the case of an e-book, you have to first go and see, are you buying the e-book or have you taken a license for the e-book? Now, it will all depend. Now, if you bought it, then there are certain things you can do with it. But if that e-book was a license, then there are many things which you can't do, and you can do very few things. So now the digital world is bringing us into a situation where on one hand it looks very simple and easy. On the other hand, it is very important that we need to look at these aspects very, very carefully.
Okay, so the next question is from Geetam Chetri. The question is, while publishing books, do we need to take copyright permission if proper in-text citations and references are given?
Now, for example, suppose you are picking up a figure from somewhere, a diagram, and you have not made any changes to the diagram. Then you will find today, since I write a lot of books and I write a lot of chapters in various books, then immediately what happens is the publisher comes back and tells us that please, have you taken permission from the source and from where you're reproducing this particular thing? Or if you're adapting, if you adapt it, you make the change, and if that adaptation is substantive or transformative, we put that this is adapted from such and such place. There a reference is okay. But if I reproduce the figure, and if that figure falls under the copyright, and if the copyright belongs to the publisher, then we have to go to the publisher and take permission before lifting it and putting it straight in the book or chapter.
So the next question is from Dr. Rastam Brahma. His question is, does IPR has any specific time period? I mean, how long an author can hold his right on a particular book? If so, how long?
Now, good. Very nice question. Now, as far as, so this falls under what is known literary work. And now for literary work in India, our law says it will be from the date of publication to the life of the author, and then 60 years after the life of the author. So life of the author and 60 years of the life of the author. After that, now for example, Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, all his works now are out of copyright. And therefore, now you find people using Tagore's works in films, in putting all things together, people making music out of it, people making all sorts of creative things. Now they don't have to go to Shantiniketan or Vishwabharati to take permission anymore. Because now Vishwabharati doesn't have right. But very important that even though what is known as the economic rights have now expired of Rabindranath Tagore's thing, because it is his death, his life, and 60 years after his death is over. So the copyright to Rabindranath Tagore's works are over. But suppose I create a work which would hurt Tagore's reputation or thing, that falls under what is known as moral rights under the copyright law, and then Vishwabharati can take objection, not otherwise.
Sure. So the next question is from Ms. Swati Patel. During lockdown, if I plan to scan storybooks to send it to my students on the app, will it be a violation of copyright?
It will be if it's a copyrighted material. It will be. It will be a blatant copyright. Because again, the right to distribute, you don't have the right to distribute if it is in copyright. Then you'll have to take permission. Hey, lockdown or no lockdown. So now, in fact, there was a case. There's a very interesting case that took place, in fact, last month, where there was a situation like this which came in, and the moment the publishers went to the court, those people who were doing this immediately withdrew the whole matter.
So
So yes,
yeah.
please go ahead.
Yes, sir. One last question. This question is from Mr. Saktivelu. His request is to you to say something about the fair use
Oh,
of books.
right. Now, in India, as I told you, the copyright law has a section called Section 52. I referred to Section 52 in my lecture, but I went through very, very cursorily and quickly. Section 52 of the Indian Patent Act, Indian Copyright Act, lists the whole bunch of exceptions to the copyright law, copyright. So in that Section 52, in that list, it tells you what are the type of things that you can do without taking permission of the copyright holder. In that, if you want to use a copyrighted material for your personal use, private use, you're not distributing, you make a copy and keep it for yourself, it's fine. If you are doing it for research, it is fine. If you're writing a critique, it is fine, right? Like this, there are a whole list of items. Also what libraries can do, what they cannot do. And all similarly, what you can do for disabled people, all that falls within the exceptions. And therefore, it's extremely important to understand those limitations, or not limitations, those exceptions under the Copyright Act and Section 52. So I would suggest that you can look into the Section 52 carefully. But what we are doing to help you out, the guide that we are writing for librarians, we have gone into all this in great detail. What I can promise you that in the next month or so, NDLI is going to put this particular guide in their website in a month's time, and we are going to invite comments from all of you. So look for it, and I'm sure all the people who attended today's session, we will send you a message that it has been uploaded in the NDLI website. Please do go to it and then give your comments, raise many questions. We will try and address all of them, and then the final form will give you a month's time to respond, and then we will collect all your questions there, try and address it in the guide again if you missed out for whatever reasons, and then we will release that guide formally under the NDLI.
So one last question. This question is from Ms. Mamta Maggu. Her question is there any liberation given to the librarians go out of their regular role during this pandemic situation to help the faculty members and the students?
I've not quite understood the question, but then the person asking it, can the person clarify what do you mean go out of their thing to help? Now, I must understand the context before I can really respond to this question. I've not quite understood the question.
Okay, so Ms. Mamta Maggu, could you elaborate on your question, because we are not able to understand. And also there is a question about any additional reading material available on this copyright law.
Certainly, it's available. If you want, I will pass some of them on to you, and you can distribute it to the people who have registered today.
Sure, sir. Sure, we will do that.
That can certainly be done.
And
that's
also,
not an issue.
Many of them have asked for your presentation. Is there a possibility?
That's not an issue either. Okay. You can distribute the PDF version to everybody, and we will convert it into PDF. I'll send it to you tomorrow, and you can share it with everybody.
Sure.
You can put it in the NDLI website. You can put it in your website, and we'll be open with all this. After all, we want everyone to appreciate. So we don't want to cave in with our things. So please be free to distribute to as many people as you want.
Sure, sir. So thank you so much for your wonderful presentation and patiently answering all the questions. I'm sure 293 participants on this webinar, and also we may have another 150 participants on the YouTube live, and all of them we thoroughly enjoyed. I'm requesting Balagopal sir to share his final remarks.
It was an
Well, thank you very
Dr.
much, first of all, and I'm very
Professor
grateful to you for having invited me for this. Thank you.
Ganguly Saab, it was a very amazing speech on copyright, and we people are enjoying it because now the librarians, the authors, the writers, they should know the every law, the smallest point in this copyright law, and you have explained to them very legitimately and very perfectly. We're grateful to you for coming over to this webinar and inspiring us and giving us thoughts and giving us education to implement the copyright and the problems behind the copyright law, and which can be because everybody is afraid. Is that the copyright law? Suppose I browse this digital library, and is there any copyright law, copyright affected to me? Such simple questions they will ask, quite naturally, because it's the copyright law of the government of India. So we have learned, we have educated. Thank you, sir, for giving us such a wonderful speech, imaginative and educational speech. Thank you, sir. Please associate with us in all our further activities to make this reading mission a legend. What we can through reading mission, the Indian population, the 130 crores of the Indian population can derive knowledge, and our as you rightly said, knowledge management, and we are in the process of setting up knowledge societies. That is the need of the day. Knowledge societies in all the villages, in all panchayats of the country. Thank you very much, sir, for giving us a wonderful thoughts. Thank you.
It's been my privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you.
Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dear participants, I have just shared the feedback form URL on the chat box. So kindly click on this form URL and then submit your feedback, and then you can download your certificate of participation with there. And in case if it says that you have not registered for this webinar, then I'm going to share this URL with you. In case if it says that you have not registered for this webinar, so that you can register yourself and then submit the feedback. Okay, so I'm just entered the feedback from registration URL as well in the chat box. And tomorrow we have a webinar on that's a very interesting webinar too. That's on hygiene and health of school going children. So by Dr. Pankaj Srivastav, who is a very well and very well known cardiologist in Uttar Pradesh. So he's going to be with us tomorrow. So kindly join us tomorrow for this session. I'm just entered the session details on the chat box. So kindly register if you have not registered yet for this webinar. And once again, we would like to thank Professor Ganguly for taking out his time and being with us in spite of his schedule, and Balagopalji for hosting this webinar for us, Balagopalji.
Thank
And,
you. Thank you.
With this, we will end this webinar. Once again, thank you all the participants who have come in spite of your busy schedule, because you might be doing multitasking. We know like many of you are teachers, librarians, you work day and night to prepare the course materials, and then you come and attend these webinars. You may be attending so many webinars, but still you attend this webinar and give equal importance. And we are very thankful to you as well. Thank you so much, and we see you tomorrow. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
sir. Thank you.
Thank you.